Hello everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel of Victory IS. As we have been discussing the contemporary issues pertaining to the year 2022, in the same series we have brought another topic which is again related to environment conservation. We have already discussed 3-4 topics of environment conservation. This is the second edition of that environment conservation. So let's see the topics that we are going to discuss today. See, the first topic would be related to Delhi's pollution, wherein a solution has been proposed. A solution to the stubble burning. We know that Delhi's pollution, one of the prominent factor for Delhi's pollution is stubble burning. And to this problem, a solution has been given in the name of decomposer capsules. So, we will talk about this in detail. We will also talk about in detail how geography is responsible for, how geography of Delhi is responsible for pollution of Delhi. We will also talk about this in detail. So, because you should understand Delhi's pollution is very severe. In the recent past, it has crossed 500 AQI. It has crossed at places, it has crossed 500 AQI. So, it has to do with some topography, something to the climate of Delhi. We'll have a discussion, and then the anthropogenic activities are amplifying the problem. That is why Delhi has a unique problem of air pollution. We'll have a discussion about that, and then we'll talk about the solution, especially of the stubble burning. That was the news. And then second topic is related to United in Science report, again related to environment conservation only, a report which tracks the efforts that have been taken in the fight against the climate change. So, that would be the part of discussion of this report. We will talk about this again. And then COP27 means COP of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and this COP is related to 2022. So, in this COP there was some important development wherein an executive action plan has been suggested, and for that some funding has been given. So, we will have a detailed discussion about this. Basically, this one is related to the disasters that are becoming frequent and more intense. So, the disasters which are becoming frequent and intense, and they are attributed to climate change. This intensity and frequency which is increasing or becoming unpredictable, it is happening because of the climate change. So, again the efforts are being made at the international level in order to deal with these disasters, and for the same sake this $3.1 billion US dollar has been sanctioned in order to establish early warning systems across the globe. So, this is a fund for early warning systems to be established across the globe, especially the developing countries which bear the brunt of the climate change, and because of the underdevelopment, because of the technological backwardness, they are not able to deal with the disasters which are becoming frequent, which are becoming intensified because of the climate change. So, this is another effort. We will have a detailed discussion. And then carbon sequestration. So, carbon sequestration in soil, when the after carbon is being captured, sequestration means capturing. So, once the carbon is captured from the atmosphere, it is stored into the soil. So, how it is stored into the soil and what it becomes, how it is useful, we will have a detailed discussion about all these topics. So, let us begin with the detailed discussion of the first topic. So, the first topic is related to decomposers capsule, biodecomposer capsule. Why bio? Because it is biodegradable, it is biological in nature. So, and decomposer means any agent, any solution which facilitates the process of decomposition. In environment, you already know that through the process of decomposition, the organic matter converts into inorganic nutrients. The organic matter converts into inorganic nutrients, and this is done artificially through a capsule. So, this is the news related to this process. Basically, the organic matter that are present in the field, and what are those organic matter? Those organic matters are the stubble, paddy stubble, wheat stubble. So, stubble is the leftover after the harvesting. So, वो जो छोटा सा part जो ज़मीन से जुड़ा हुआ है, that strand is called stubble. So, wheat stubble is there, paddy stubble is there in the fields, and in order to go for sowing in the next season, these stubbles are burnt in the field itself, and when they are burnt, that process is called stubble burning, and because of this stubble burning, the pollution is occurring. And since pollution is occurring because of the stubble burning, so stubble burning becomes a problem, becomes a concern for the governments in the at the national level as well as at the international level. So, this stubble burning is causing a problem, especially when the world and the national governments including India is fighting against the climate crisis. So, in the same backdrop, this technology has been developed, this capsule has been developed, which is a biodecomposer capsule, which is basically a solution comprising of bacteria, comprising of fungi, and these bacteria and fungi would be, especially the fungi, would be responsible for decomposition process, and ultimately these stubbles which are the leftovers in the field, they would be decomposed and they would be converted into some useful form that is called manure or compost. So, they would be converted into compost, they would be converted into useful manure. So, it will have two benefits. This technology will have two benefits broadly. One, it will help us to deal with the problem of stubble burning, which is ultimately contributing to the pollution, air pollution. And second benefit is that if this stubble is ultimately converted into manure or compost, that would be used in enhancing the agricultural productivity. So, that is why it is a very good project, it is a very good technological development. Now, let us have a look what the newspapers were saying about this capsule. So, let us see the news. Okay. So, Delhi government will spare biodecomposer capsules to curb stubble burning. Why Delhi government? Because the major problem of Delhi's pollution, if I write somewhere, let me write here. If I talk about Delhi's air pollution, which is one of the biggest concern for the government in Delhi as well as government at the union level. Delhi's air pollution, because it Delhi kind of converts into gas chamber, which was referred, this term was referred by a Supreme Court judge in 2019, that it converts into a gas chamber because of a number of factors, especially in winters. So every winter, Delhi's air pollution becomes severe, becomes the worst, and there are several factors responsible for it. Obviously, the anthropogenic factors are there. The anthropogenic factors are there. Anthropogenic factors means deforestation. So, you know that forests acts as natural sink. So, once you have deforested those areas, so that natural sink has been destroyed. As well as once you deforest any area, the soil particles that get bound by the forest, they become loosely packed, and they can, with the wind they can get into the atmosphere in the form of particulate matter. Particulate matter is nothing but the suspended dust particles, ash particles, pollen grains, they are the particulate matter. And if you have heard of something called as PM10 and PM2.5, these are the particulate matters which are considered to be air pollutants, highly harmful for humans as well as for the properties. Anyway, so deforestation is one major reason. Then it is vehicular exhaust. So in Delhi there are large number of vehicles. In fact, in any important metropolitan city, the vehicles are in large number, the private vehicles. So because of the vehicular exhaust, there are the oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, all those things are released into atmosphere, causing air pollution. Then construction activities. You know that Indian cities are undergoing urbanization, agglomeration. So construction activities are going at large scale, and when the construction activity will take place, again large amount of dust particles are released from the construction sites, and thereafter they ultimately contribute to air pollution. So construction activities. Then industrial exhaust, industrial emissions, industrial exhaust. So all these are the human factors which are almost present in every city, causing air pollution in the respective cities. Same is the story of Delhi, but these are the anthropogenic factors. So why the question comes up, if these activities are occurring in almost every city of India, every important city of India, then why Delhi converts into gas chamber, especially in winters, and other cities do not become as polluted as Delhi? So what are the reasons? So if I talk about that, let me explain you the geographical factors. How geography of Delhi is responsible for the extreme situation, severe situation of Delhi's air pollution. So you should know that Delhi, if you look at Delhi, Delhi is situated in, if I draw the map of India, a rough map, so I am trying to show only Delhi part. Over here it is Delhi. So Delhi, if you look at Delhi, Delhi is a city which is landlocked. It is not surrounded by the oceans or any important water body. So it is landlocked, first thing. Second, it lies, if you look at this, over here there is Aravalli, over here there is Vindhya range, and this is mighty Himalaya. So if you look at Delhi, Delhi is surrounded by important mountain ranges from all sides, and this gives Delhi something called as basin effect. So basically, Delhi is located in the basin zone of these mountain ranges. The Aravalli from the western and southwestern side, from the southern side it is Vindhya, and from the northern side it is mighty Himalayas. So in between this entire area, which is called Indo-Gangetic Plain, where Delhi is situated, this entire Gangetic Plain experiences basin effect. What is this basin effect? Basically, whatever dust particles, whatever ash particles, I have not written stubble burning here, let me write stubble burning here as well, especially for Delhi. So if you look at the basin effect, so whatever dust particles, ash particles are getting released because of the anthropogenic activities, they are trapped in this area because of the mountain ranges which surround this entire Gangetic Plains. So whatever dust particles are getting released, they are getting trapped, they do not redistribute itself into the atmosphere because of the height of these mountains which surround the entire Indo-Gangetic Plain. So entire Indo-Gangetic Plain remains polluted because of this basin effect. If you look at cities like Lucknow, Patna, any important city of UP and Bihar also, you will find that the pollution level is high, not as high as Delhi, but again it is a grave concern for those governments as well. Agar wo interested hai to, I don't know. So, but yes, so because of this basin effect, the problem of dust particles, the problem of ash particles get amplified. And that is why, because of non-dispersion or non-distribution of the particles which are generated here, this entire area is highly polluted. This is called basin effect. Then second effect, which is very common in winters, is called temperature inversion. So temperature inversion is one problem which is again causing severe pollution level in Delhi. So that is the reason that when winters it is going to Delhi is going to convert into gas chamber, because this effect is already there, these things are already there, and this becomes prominent in winter. What is happening? First you need to understand temperature inversion. So let's say this is the earth's surface. So in winters this earth's surface gets cooled, there would be radiation from the earth's surface and this surface is becoming colder. So earth's surface is becoming colder, so air in contact with this surface is also becoming colder. And since air in contact is also cold, it means that this portion of the atmosphere, is heavy. Heavy means it will try to stick near to the surface, and obviously if I move over this, so relatively in the upper troposphere the temperature is relatively more. So this effect, wherein there are two layers broadly, the lower layer is colder and the upper layer is warmer, this situation is called temperature inversion. Why inversion? Because normally if you look at, as you move up from the surface into the atmosphere, temperature usually declines, and that is called normal lapse rate, but it is opposite to the normal lapse rate. So that is why it is called inversion. It is opposite to normal lapse rate. So that is why it is called temperature inversion. So this temperature inversion, basin effect, which are the geographical factors and which amplify the problems, the air pollutants, the dust particles, the ash particles which are present in and around Delhi, causing severe conditions of air pollution in Delhi. So these are the factors broadly which are responsible for Delhi's air pollution. Now this typical news, the news that we are talking about, is related to the solving the problem of stubble burning, especially in Delhi. This news was related to Delhi. So, one problem, this problem would be resolved, and if this problem is resolved, ultimately the fertility of the soil will also enhance. Let us see this. So, about the capsule, what is this capsule? It will accelerate the decomposition process from stubble to manure. So, that is what I said. It will ultimately remove the stubble from the field, and ultimately the stubble would be converted into compost or manure, and that is how it is dealing with two problems, one air pollution and second enhancing or improving the fertility of the soil. Then and this entire process takes around 15-20 days. So, it is a bit time taking process, but anyway it is any day better than the stubble burning, which is causing huge pollution. So, it comprises as a dormant form of decomposing bacteria and certain fungi and cell mass of fungal spores. So, that is what I said, it comprises of bacteria and fungi, accelerating the process of decomposition under both aerobic as well as anaerobic. Aerobic means in presence of air, anaerobic means decomposition in absence of air, not in presence of air. So, both the decompositions, both types of decompositions will take place when this capsule would be used. So, basically this capsule has been, this is very important line for the prelims. This concept could be asked in the prelims, mind you. So, how it is working, what it comprises of, all those things could be written. It is enhancing, accelerating the process of decomposition, or it might write, if it is incorrect statement, it is de-accelerating or declining the process of decomposition. Those statements will be written. Anyway, capsules have been developed by Indian Agricultural Research Institute. This institute is in Delhi. It is in New Delhi. If you know Pusa Institute, there is an institute called Pusa Institute. So, this Pusa Institute, which is near to Karol Bagh only, the area where most of the students come for preparation of UPSC when they come to Delhi. So, this Pusa Institute is the another name of Indian Agricultural Research Institute, which is typically a research institute for agricultural development. Okay, then moving further. I have already discussed, but let me read it for you once. So, stubble burning is a process of setting on fire the straw stubble left after the harvesting of grains like paddy, wheat, etc. Make sense? So, basically the harvesting machines are being used. So, when harvesting machines are being used, they leave the stubble a bit larger in size. So, they have to be removed before the next season of sowing comes up. So, why farmers in the Indo-Gangetic plain do it, as they get a very short time between harvesting of rice and sowing of wheat. So, the transition period is very short, and that is why that is the best route that farmers can think of is putting the stubble for burning. So, this stubble is put for burning, and then ultimately that straw, that stubble is removed, but that has some adverse consequences in the form of air pollution. What is the impact of this? Stubble burning causes loss of nutrients. It is not 100% correct statement, this one, loss of nutrients. Loss of nutrients will take place, but because of this burning, certain inorganic nutrients are also added in the soil. So, but it will also occur, certain nutrients would be destroyed. Microorganisms in the soil. So, the microorganisms which are present in the soil, they would also be destroyed, they would be killed because of the burning, and then toxic pollutants to be released into the atmosphere. That this is the major problem. Then the different steps have been already taken, like stubble burning is made crime. It is a criminal offence under IPC and also Air Pollution Act. So it has been made a criminal offence now. But national policy is there in order to, so different guidelines have been issued in order to deal with the crop residues. Crop residue is nothing but the stubble, right, which is burnt in the field. So promotion of machines, certain other technological developments have occurred in the past, like rotavators are used. Rotavators basically, they mix these stubbles, the large stubbles that are present in the field with the soil. But again, this is not a very effective process because the mixing process is not very effective by using rotavators. Then happy seeders are basically used for wheat sowing, especially in Punjab, Haryana region and western UP, where the farmers have large land holding size. So happy seeders are used for wheat sowing after harvesting of the paddy crop. So after harvesting of the paddy crop, the stubble is of large size, which is attached with the soil. So what this happy seeder does, this first cuts that stubble which is there in the soil, and then that is uplifted, that remains temporarily stored in the seeder, and then seed is put into the bare soil, that wheat is put into the bare soil, and then ultimately the stored paddy stubble which has been cut is again dropped over that sown area, and ultimately it becomes, that paddy stubble becomes like a mulch layer over the sown wheat field. So that mulch layer is ultimately converting into organic matter. So that is also a good way, but happy seeders are very expensive. Then use of stubble burning in cattle feed. So basically that stubble could be used as a feeding material for the cattle, and then it could be also converted into bioethanol. If you know, already several bioethanol plants have been, not several but one or two have been installed in Punjab and Haryana region, so that the stubble could be converted into bioethanol. And if you know, already government has been talking about blending of bioethanol with the petrol, although that also was controversial few months back. But again, this is what are the developments with respect to dealing with stubble burning. Very important question for the prelims as well as mains examination. Now move to the next part of the contemporary issues. So this one is related to a report which is saying United in Science report. This is a report which is produced by, this is a work of multiple agencies. So it is a multi-agency report. First thing you should know that it is a multi-agency report, but the major organization which is involved here is WMO, World Meteorological Organization. So all these multiple agencies which are involved in creation of this report has been coordinated by World Meteorological Organization. So this is important line, could be a line in the prelims examination. So like certain questions are created, like United in Science report is associated with which of the following organizations. So this has to be there, right? And then now let's see what report tells us about the efforts which the countries have taken in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So basically this report is tracking the greenhouse gas emissions concentrations in the respective countries. So let's see, United in Science shows that greenhouse gas concentrations continue to rise to record high. If I give you a fact, in the last decade, the decade from 2015 to 2024, the temperature, the average temperature of the earth increased by around 0.27 degrees Celsius, and this is the warmest decade. This is the warmest decade till now on record. Whatever recordings we have with respect to the warming of the Earth's surface, this is the warmest decade on record. So, the latest decade was the warmest one, and it is expected that if the current rate of exploitation of the resources remain continued, the upcoming decades would be more warm, would be, as we move further, the warming will increase. So, that is why it is saying that it continued to rise record highs. Make sense? Then what are the key findings of this report? So, climate science is clear. It is saying that the climate science is clear and it is heading in the wrong direction. The developmental activities that the countries are taking up, they are not in the right direction. They are not being undertaken in the sustainable manner, in the eco-friendly manner. No, that is not happening. So, that is what report is clearly articulating. And then the ambition of the emissions reduction pledges for 2030 needs to be 7 times higher to be in line with 1.5 degree goals of Paris Agreement. So, you know that Paris Agreement it is referring to is of 2015. It is also called COP21. Whenever I am using the word COP is related to Conference of Parties of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So, COP21, which is also famously known as Paris Agreement of 2015, has pledged for certain goals in the fight against the climate change, and the short term goal was that the average temperature of the earth should not increase beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the long term goal was that at the max it should not increase more than 2 degrees Celsius, because it is believed that once 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius temperature of the earth is increased, it is the tipping point. It means that there would be no reversal after this. So, that is why this report is saying that if at all we are serious about these goals of Paris Agreement, our developmental activities needs to be sustainable, needs to be more oriented towards the eco-friendly nature. Many of the extreme weather events that we are experiencing are more likely and become more intense. So, that is what I said in the beginning of the discussion, that due to this global warming and climate change, the disasters are becoming unpredictable. So, the predicting capacity of the institutions is being questioned now. Why? Because of the climate change, the intensity has become very high. In fact, the unpredictability is very high, and the frequency of these events, these disasters has become very high. So, these are the concerns now, and in order to deal with this concern, WMO has come up with something called as early warnings for all in the next 5 years, that we will discuss in the next topic. But these are the findings of this report. Do remember that this report is associated with WMO along with multiple agencies, and this is basically tracking the emissions of the greenhouse gases across the globe, and it is providing the recommendations how the countries of the world should progress with respect to the developmental activities. So, about the report I have already told you, but yes, let us have a reading of it. It is a new multi-agency report. It is a new report. It has been started in 2020s only, coordinated by Meteorological Organization. It provides an overview of the most recent science related to climate change. So, what are the scientific phenomena that are associated with the climate change? So, it is having a objective discussion. So, that is what it said. If you see, they are saying that the uh, the goals, in order to meet those goals, the efforts have to be 7 times more, so they are having objective discussions. It means that science related to climate change. Okay, then moving further, WMO unveils COP27, it is. So, United in Science Report 2021. So, this we have already discussed. I am sorry. This one. Let's talk about this one. WMO unveils USD 3.1 billion action plan. So, there is one executive action plan, for early warning systems, for early warnings related to disasters. So, this WMO, World Meteorological Organization, recently released the executive action plan of early warnings for all. So, this executive plan has been released by WMO. If you remember, that came from, that development is from the last topic that we discussed, and the executive action plan of early warnings for all was released during a roundtable meeting at 27th COP of UNFCCC. So, the last topic that we discussed, and then it aims to develop a global early warning system for extreme weather events that have been intensified because of the climate change. These things we have already discussed, so I am not reiterating those points. The plan proposes the initial investment of, so these numbers are not that important, but if you can remember and then use it in the mains examination, that would fetch very good marks. Delivering early warning systems for all, this investment is equal to around 50 cents for each person per annum. So, again, these numbers are not that important, but yes, these are the actions which have been taken at the international level to deal with the disasters which are becoming intensified, which are becoming frequent because of the climate change. Let us see how this fund would be utilized. So, if you look at the fund diversion, how this fund has to be utilized, there is disaster risk knowledge. It should be used for disaster risk knowledge. Disaster risk knowledge means risk analysis it is going to involve into. What is this risk analysis? Risk analysis is associated with two things. One is hazard mapping. In order to analyze the risk associated with a disaster, hazard mapping has to be done. The entire country has to be mapped according to the kind of hazards that it might experience. For example, the Himalayan region experience high intensity earthquake, and accordingly the peninsular plateau is relatively stable when it comes to earthquake. So, basically the hazard mapping of earthquake is to be done, then accordingly cyclones is to be done. The coastal areas, the eastern coast is highly vulnerable to cyclones. So, that is called hazard mapping, the mapping of the entire country or entire world based on the kind of hazard that they might experience in the future. And then second is called vulnerability analysis. Vulnerability analysis means how vulnerable a community is, means what is the capability of the community to cope up if a disaster occurs. So, basically this vulnerability is related to coping capability, of a community. So, let us say if there occurs a disaster and people who are impacted by this disaster, they do not have a well developed preparedness or a system which can help them to cope up with this disaster. So, it means that their vulnerability is very high. So, I can say that, for example, the people who are disabled, their vulnerability would be high. People who are poor, their vulnerability would be high. So, combining these two things, risk analysis of every disaster or every community, every area should be conducted, and this fund should be utilized for this purpose as well. So, risk analysis will be done by the fund which has been given under WMO. So, this is how risk analysis is to be undertaken. Then obviously regular observations and forecasting. You observe a particular area after the hazard mapping, that these are the areas where probability of occurrence of a particular disaster is more. So, continuous observation would be there, and if there is some development which could be, which has the potential to convert into disaster, those forecastings are to be done, those predictions are to be done, so that people within time could be relocated from the vulnerable place to the safer place. Then preparedness and response. Preparedness and response includes all those actions which ensures that once the disaster occurs, how we are going to respond to it. So, it is not that every time you can control the disaster. No, that is not possible. Majority of the disasters are naturally occurring. So, humans have not developed that mechanism till now that they can altogether eliminate the occurrence of a disaster. So, disasters will occur, but you need to be prepared, you need to be highly promptly responsive. So, that preparedness has to be done before the occurrence of the disaster. ऐसा नहीं कि बाढ़ आ गई और फिर आप बांध बनाना शुरू किया. You start making embankment once the flood is there. That's not possible. So, that is, for this purpose also the fund is to be used. Then communication of early warnings. Whatever early warnings are there, like let us say a cyclone has started building up in Bay of Bengal, and it gives, let us say, 24 hours to reach to make landfall to the eastern coast, let us say Chennai. So, people in Chennai have 24 hours to prepare themselves to move from that place to a safer place. So, that is, it has to be communicated. The dissemination of information is very important. So, all those things are, that network has to be, that communication network has to be developed, right. So, the fund is to be utilized for these purposes. It is giving the explanation of all those things, like how much fund would go for what purpose. It is also talking about that, but that is not at all needed. Okay, like they are giving some 374 million US dollar for disaster risk analysis. All those things are not important, but yes, these things could be asked in the prelims as well as mains examination. Do remember that for these four broad purposes, the fund is to be utilized, which has been unveiled by World Meteorological Organization. Then moving further, disaster risk knowledge involved systematically all those things. So, I am leaving it here because all these things I have already discussed. Okay. Then importance of early warnings. So, this is one additional point. If you know what exactly is early warning systems, early warning systems are the systems in place, network in place, which will help in weather forecasting, weather predictions, and communicating the message to the right community. So, that is what early warning systems are there for. So, are not still accessible to 33% of the global population. So, it is that population which is relatively poor, which it is all those countries which have relatively lesser development with respect to technology and economy as well. So, especially in the least developed countries and small islands, developing states. So, that is what I said. Over 60% of the population in Africa. Africa is the so called least developed a continent in the world. So nearly 60% of the population still do not have access to these early warning systems. So it means that if at all the disaster occurs here, the vulnerability, the risk is very high. Makes sense? Early warning systems play a major role in reducing casualty. Obviously, it will pre-inform you, so accordingly you can prepare yourself to fight back from the disaster. And just 24 hours notice of impending disaster can minimize damage by 30%. So that is a great saving when it comes to the information is given prior before the occurrence in 24 hours. Okay, so this is how we move further. Okay, then there is another important topic called carbon sequestration. So it is soil carbon sequestration. So first thing you should know that what exactly is carbon sequestration. So carbon sequestration means carbon capture. Capture from where? From the atmosphere. So in atmosphere, CO2 is there. This CO2 is to be captured. Obviously, there are natural methods like plants does that job, and we have developed some artificial methods as well. So we are talking about in this news about the obviously the artificial methods. So carbon capture, plant can do that. How it is being done with the help of the plants? So plants basically involved into photosynthesis process, and in this photosynthesis CO2 is the main input, CO2 is the main ingredient that is being used. So basically CO2 present in the atmosphere is captured by the plants during the process of photosynthesis, and ultimately CO2 is converted into carbon, organic carbon, and it obviously it goes till the level of soil. That is why it is called soil carbon sequestration. Okay, so now the news is that ICRISAT is International Crops Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics. It has published a study revealing how right combination of fertilizers, biochars are basically the amorphous material. I'll explain, don't worry. So fertilizers, biochar and irrigation, which could potentially increase the soil capture as much as 300%. So this is a great development from ICRISAT. What is the findings? So biochar increase the carbon value in the soil. So biochars are basically the burnt materials of the biomass. So that is what biochar is, and that is increasing the carbon amount in the soil. Then optimal utilization of fertilizers increased again. In India, if you look at the fertilizers are not being optimally used. At times, majority of the times they are being used in excess, which is causing problems related to soil infertility. But this report is saying that if we use the fertilizers optimally, it will enhance the soil carbon sequestration capacity. So this is a good move, but again you need to take care of the optimal level of utilization of the fertilizers. Okay, because once you use excess amount of the fertilizers, it will result into certain processes called, you must have heard of something called as eutrophication and biomagnification. Eutrophication and biomagnification. But optimal utilization is a right strategy. Then carbon sequestration is a process in which I have already explained. It is a process in which the CO2 from the atmosphere is captured and ultimately is stored into the soil, and that is why it is called soil carbon sequestration. Okay, moving further. So, this is the process wherein naturally the CO2 is being captured from the atmosphere and ultimately goes into the soil. This one I have already explained. Now, let us see certain other findings of this news. So, building up soil carbon can help cut greenhouse concentration. Makes sense. It will have two benefits basically. One is related to, once there is carbon capture, you know that this carbon is responsible for global warming and climate change. So, ultimately if carbon is being captured, means that this problem must be dealt with. And second, that if the carbon is being captured and then transferred to soil, it means that organic carbon in the soil increases, and if organic carbon increases, it means that fertility of the soil will improve. Fertility of the soil improves. So, these are the things that it has been talking about. Biochar, I already told you, it is a charcoal or amorphous material substance that burns organic material, agriculture and forestry waste in a controlled process, and उस controlled process का नाम है pyrolysis. You already know this. Okay, let's move further. So, let's take up this last topic. So, report on sustainable finance submitted to IFSCA. IFSCA is International Financial Services Centers Authority. International Financial Services Centers Authority, which has been established in Gandhinagar. Gandhinagar mein there is something called as Gift City. In Gandhinagar there is Gift City, and in this Gift City this Centers Authority has been established. Gandhinagar is in Gujarat, if you know. Gandhinagar is the capital of Gujarat. So, it has been established here, and report on sustainable finance have been submitted this, to IFSCA. What is this report and what is this organization doing? So, basically this IFSCA is responsible for development and deployment and regulation of financial services. So, whatever financial services are to be developed and to be regulated, earlier it was regulated by a number of agencies, but now it is being regulated by IFSCA, a dedicated body has been created. Okay. Then certain recommendations have been given in this report. So, sustainable finance means green finance. Another name for sustainable finance could be green finance. And then developing a voluntary carbon market. So, voluntary carbon market means it will allow carbon trading. What is this carbon trading? So, let us say you are involved in afforestation activities, and once afforestation activities happens, it means that you have excess of carbon sequestration. Your carbon sink is very large. It means that you get a certificate of carbon credits, and these carbon credits could be sold to the entities which are responsible for pollution. So, this entire sale and purchase of carbon credits is called carbon trading, and for that a market is there. That market is called carbon market, that is to be developed. That is what this report is saying. Then framework for transition bonds. Transition bonds means, let us say there is a company which is involved in energy generation using thermal power, using coal, and that company, that industry translates itself from this thermal power generation to renewable power generation, there is a transition, and during this transition it requires certain funds, and in order to raise that funds it resort to issuing bonds, and this type of bond is called transition bond. Then de-risking mechanism means certain kinds of safety nets to be given to the to such developments, to such transitions. So, insurance facility could be given, or government might give them some kind of incentive for promotion of these things. Then promoting regulatory sandbox for green fintech. Again, green fintech, the financial technology which is focused on green initiatives, that is green fintech. So, all these suggestions are there. Again, this one is important. MSME platforms are to be developed. MSME platforms which will be focusing on those MSMEs which are involved in green initiatives, whose process of production, distribution is based on some initiative which is typically based on the energy sources which have lesser carbon intensity. Okay, then the instruments, these are the instruments that people can resort to, industries can resort to: catastrophe bond, municipal bonds, green securitization. So, green securitization is something related to de-risking mechanism, and then blended finance. Blended finance means mechanism of finance wherein there is green bond as well as that fund could also be used for some other purposes as well. So, it is kind of blending. Okay, so the idea of sustainable finance, already told you that it is a green finance. It is another term for this could be green finance. So, all those financing activities which are involved in green initiatives, less energy consuming initiatives, or say energy generation via renewable sources, not the coal based energy generation, all those initiatives are called, all those financial activities are called green finance or sustainable finance. So, it is the set of the financial regulations, standards, norms, productions that pursue an environmental objective and in particular to facilitate the energy transition. Yep. So, we have already discussed this one, IFSCA, which was established in 2020 for development and regulation of the financial services, financial products, financial institutions. It is in GIFT city of Gujarat. These facts I have already given to you. So, this would be all for the day. Thank you so very much. Have a great day.